Hey, Derek, how are you?
Hey, Bree, doing pretty good.
Fantastic. Well, why don't we go ahead and get things started here? Hi, everyone. My name is Bree Sprague. I am the Partner Success Manager for RevGenius, and we are so excited today to have Derek Wang, Sales Manager from our partner UserGems here, to talk about 7 surprising tips to help you accelerate your sorry about that. Sorry about that. Help you accelerate your deals and finally hit that quota. I saw a preview of this. You're going to come away with tons of tips and tricks, really useful information. And it's just a few housekeeping things. This will be on demand for you within the next 24 hours. If you'd like a recording, you can always email me, Bree@revgenius.com. And please feel free to be active in the chat, and we're going to have some time for Q&A at the end. Thanks so much. Derek, looking forward to hearing this.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the intro here, Bree. I hope that everyone had a really good long weekend. I know for some of you who are Pacific hours, it might be kind of early in the day. So thanks for joining. And yeah, as we go through things, feel free to pop in the chat. Hopefully this can be as engaging as possible. I'd love to trade tips with all of you who are watching, and hear some of your favorite tips and tricks for accelerating your own funnel. Without further ado, what I can do is I can pop into a screen share here, and hopefully this works. All right, so this is my first time using this platform. And I am having an error with streaming my screen. So Bree or Amanda, I'm not sure if either of you can help out here with sharing some slides.
Let me see.
deals that might actually see movement. So a couple kind of key questions to ask yourself here before you step into any meeting with a prospect, especially for first calls, is I always ask myself these three things. How does a company or a prospect actually earn money? What are the possible near-term risks and goals of the person I'm meeting with? And third, this one's my favorite. If I worked for this company in this person's role, put yourself in their shoes. Why would your product be a good fit or potentially even a bad fit? And really play hard on being devil's advocate against your own product. And this will help you kind of take more of an unbiased stance on why your prospect should or should not work with you. This will all trickle down into how much trust you can build with your prospect later on. So there's two places that I really like to go to gather information for when I'm researching a prospect before I meet with them. Internal and external resources. And so the most common place reps go is to external resources. We'll dive into that in a second. But you might be surprised at how much actual internal information you can find. And what I mean by that is information about a prospect from within your own company. So what you can do is you can scour your CRM for previous notes, cadences, or communications that you've maybe had with this prospect. So there may be other closed loss opportunities that a previous rep had with this prospect, bunch of notes that are stored there on why they weren't interested. Another thing is you can see essentially whether or not you have similar customers in the same industry or space or of similar size to the person you're about to meet with. What this allows you to do is start to look at different use cases that match more closely with the person you're going to meet with. So what I like to do is I like to go and immediately check for who are our most similar customers to the person I'm going to meet with. Then I talk to maybe the CSM who owns that account, or the previous AE who sold one of those accounts. And I get a really clear picture of what successful customers are already doing, so that I can bring those to the calls and offer really valuable insights during that call. The obvious kind of source for information is external. This is almost entirely from the internet. And so what I like to focus on here is, of course, dive into the classic Google searches, look up the company name plus versus or plus funding. There's a wealth of information within funding announcements that you can gather. You can see who their competitors are and see if you work with any of their competitors, or see if you have mutual investors, for instance. I really like going to G2 as well. And I like reading who their personas are, and what people really like about their product. This can give me a really high level view of the value that the prospects company offers. And this just gives you a really high level glance at basically how their product generates money. There's a wealth of other resources that I have listed here. Go and check those out. But yeah, I won't dive too much into these external resources. And what I want is for you to be able to walk away with a couple tactical tips for all of these seven tips that I'm going to walk you through. And so the ones for research is actually pencil out time to plan. So schedule out 5 to as long as 30 minutes before every call to actually plan for the call you're going to have. And the amount of time you spend might depend on the value of your deals, the value of this specific prospect, given their seniority, or given how priority of an account this is. Secondly, come into the call with an opinion. So a little bit of a hot take here is that, like, I think that coming in with an opinion, even if it's a wrong one or a bad one, is better than coming in and just asking generic questions. because at the end of the day, prospects like to correct you. And so even if you're wrong, that's a big win because the prospects correct your opinion and you get some free discovery points out of it. And on top of that, you showed up pretty prepared. Lastly, you do a ton of research, and then my suggestion is not to front load all of the research that you've done at the beginning of your call. It comes off as kind of weird and creepy even. So pick 1 or 2 points, talk about those at the top of the call, and then weave the rest of the research in throughout the rest of the call, just kind of showing that you did your homework. Perfect. So that was tip number 1, and I think we're doing all right on time here. I'll try to speed things up. Cool. Next tip is called multi-threading. If you want to move in, kind of high level, I see multi-threading in 2 different lights. One is called internal multi-threading, and the other is external. External is the one you might hear all the time about other sales reps doing. Internal, the definition is introducing new voices from within your own company to the prospect. So looping in maybe sales engineers or similar personas, or matching your boss with the prospect's boss, so that you have more voices from within your own company communicating with their own. And so the importance of that is that you can actually add more value to your prospect, because folks from your company who are maybe, let's say, if I sell to marketing, if I loop in my own head of marketing to talk to their head of marketing, they'll have kind of more things to talk about and to go deeper on. And so they can get extra value out of those types of meetings. And also it creates a kind of comfortable atmosphere for your prospect to share information with someone who's not a salesperson. And so no matter how good of a job you do at just being an expert consultant as a salesperson, another hot take is I think that prospects will never forget that you're a salesperson. And so there may always be a little bit of a barrier there. And so by introducing new voices who are a little more unbiased to making a sale, they may be willing to open up and tell your colleagues things they never would have told you. External multi-threading is the kind of more common type. If you want to hop back one slide. This is bringing in multiple decision makers and influencers from the prospect side. So on average, I think this is a Gong study. It takes over 7 stakeholders now to make a B2B software purchase. So you need to be making sure that other people are in communication with you and are joining your meetings in order to secure the deal. What this allows you to do is control the value that's actually being presented to your prospects, and increase the buying consensus. So at the end of the day, you don't know if your one champion is going to know how to pitch the product that you're selling to the rest of the board or the CFO or whatever other stakeholders are necessary to secure the win. So to improve your odds, get the other folks in the room with you. Couple tactical tips here for multi-threading. With internal multi-threading, the reality is your colleagues are pretty busy and they're not going to have time to help you with every single deal. So you got to pick your battles. You got to pick the deals who are most important to you, and also the ones where your colleagues can actually add real value. And so pick those ones out and make things really easy for your colleagues to help. Prep them. If they're going to be joining calls, prep them on everything they need to know before joining the call. And also, if they're going to be single threading outside of you, if you're going to have your CEO write their CEO a note on LinkedIn or via email, don't ask your CEO to write the email himself. Write it for him and make it easy for him to just go and hit send. Finally, remove yourself from the equation at all for a lot of these internal multi-threading. Just allow your prospect and your colleague to connect offline without you in the room. It can really help extensively in just building that external channel of trust. With the classic external multi-threading, I think of these in 3 buckets: pre-call, during call, and post-call multi-threading. So pre-call, before you've ever met with a prospect, I like to be sending out emails introducing myself to everyone else who could possibly influence the deal beforehand, and maybe invite them to our initial call, so that I have a better chance of getting far and wide within an org early on. During call is really when you're on a call with a prospect and you're trying to get them to refer you to other people. The easiest thing to do here is just ask them who would feel left out if they weren't included in these conversations. And then post call, once you've got that momentum built, go ahead and shoot out introductions to everyone else you think might be relevant. Always keep in mind that you want to make sure your champion looks good. So don't step on his toes. And instead, call him out, say that he's really awesome, and that it was great meeting with him, but you're just going to soft intro yourself to other folks who might be relevant. I think best piece of advice here is as well, I have 2 multi-threading playbooks, actual email templates that you can use. For anyone on the call who wants to read those, just shoot me a note after the call and I can pass them your way. All right, so the third point here is follow-ups. Before we dive in here, are there any questions from the audience? We could take a quick pause to answer any. All right, so follow-ups are, to me, probably the most important point on this entire list. The reason is because follow-ups are where all of the sale happens behind closed doors. So you're only meeting with your prospect a handful of times in person or on screen, and the rest of the time you have to capture mind share with your follow-ups. And so this keeps the excitement going and allows you to break down obstacles when you're not in a room with your prospect. So Joel, I see us a question. This is being recorded. So I believe the recording should be available shortly after. What to focus on with follow-ups? Just a couple high-level points here. Every follow-up should make the prospect feel good. People like working with people who make them feel good. And so have a positive tone to your follow-ups. Never guilt trip them, right? That should just go without saying. But secondly, enter the FOMO. People have a major fear of missing out on exciting things. So keep building excitement with them. Third point is address all their fears and concerns with your follow-ups. And fourth is always be adding value with every follow-up. And where it all starts is really with a plan. So by plan, I mean you need to be conducting really strong discovery throughout your time with prospects and be figuring out what are they excited about, what is this prospect concerned about in regards to my solution, and what did they agree to as next steps. And if you have all of those things mapped out, it becomes really easy to make strong follow-up. The key here is you can't remember everything. And so what drives me crazy is when reps do a really good job of discovery and then they don't write anything down in their CRM. And later on, you're not going to be able to recall that information for all your open ups for effective follow-up later on. So make sure you're writing down your notes. In terms of cadence and frequency of follow-ups, generally I send a bump or a note every 3 to 8 business days. I try to prioritize keeping momentum going. So right before and right after meetings is when I make sure to be following up a little more frequently to capture that mind share when they're thinking about UserGems. Of course, adapt around the prospect's own timeline and their energy levels. Don't spend a lot of time following up with folks that you can tell aren't that excited. Couple types of follow-up that I like to, categorize. Number one is value-added follow-up. So 65% of your follow-up should be value-adding. 25% should be kind of specific to the prospect. And third is timeline checks. Try to make these under 10%. No prospect likes when all you're doing is self-serving and asking them when they're going to close a deal with you. My actionable tip here is just stick to the plan. So write out an actual plan, mapping out the prospect's concerns and excitements that you're going to address with follow-up, and use descriptive tasks. I like using Salesforce and Scratchpad as my task management solution. And the way that I have it all done here is I prioritize high priority ones with RD and a red dot, and FU as follow-up as kind of my lower priority tasks. And I always write out what my next step is in following up with this prospect so that I don't have to think about it when it's time to follow up. I already know from earlier on after I had the call what my next value add should be based around. Saves a bunch of time when you front load the work initially in planning your follow-ups for future dates. Couple phrases to try here. Really, I just like starting my emails with this. I often don't say, hey, Derek, or hey, Joel, or hey, Bree. It's kind of nice to start off this way when you have that limited email space, and the prospect just knows you're already thinking about them. Final tactical tips here. Be human with your follow-ups. Write like you talk. Don't write like a marketer. Sorry, any marketers who are on here, but it doesn't work in a sales cycle. Second is always be valuable. Remove decision fatigue. Don't make your prospects constantly be making decisions from follow-ups. Guide the buying cycle for them. And then be interested and be interesting. Of course, be interested is more important. Keep learning their business and challenges as you go through the cycle, and always be asking questions throughout the follow-ups. All right. So fourth here is going to be social proof. People ultimately like buying what their friends and family buy. And so a little helpful statistic here from HubSpot is 90% of people trust suggestions from family and friends. So it's just super important to be presenting really solid social proof. This is the single most credible source of marketing out there. Yeah, ultimately, people feel safe with the herd. And so if you let them know where the herd is, then this could increase their willingness to buy from you. The two most helpful channels of social proof in my eyes are number one, of course, existing customers. And number two is maybe non-customer champions, especially mutual investors, for instance. So with customers, one thing that I like to try to do is identify companies and personas that are actually really similar to your prospect. Make sure to be tying the dots together. Don't make your prospects read between the lines here. When sharing case studies or when sharing customer stories. And what I mean by that is when you share a great customer story, try to be really specific, use first names, use details, use metrics, and then tie the dots together in that sense of explain why you're sharing that story specifically to the prospect. Why does this story in specific matter to them, and how does it correlate or look similar to the use case that you're trying to prep them for later on? An often overlooked channel is non-customer champions. So building relationships with members of your own executive team. Your own execs may have a bunch of connections that you're unaware of. So I like using a platform called Cabal that you could test out. And also LinkedIn Sales Nav has like a team link feature that you can use, but really just look at your secondary connections through executives to see who they know and whether or not they know your prospects executives to make those kind of outside connections. And another thing is check their funding announcements, check their investors as well. Look for shared investors between your own company and their company, or maybe even look for shared investors between their company and other customers of yours, so that you can leverage those connections and make them feel like their peers are safe with whatever you're trying to sell. All right, so point number 5 here is all around mutual action plans. And by mutual action plans, I don't just mean like an immediate map to close. Really, it's more around just identifying the next logical steps that your prospect should be taking to be exploring your solution. And I'm throwing in another quote here from one of my favorite people, Ben Franklin. If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. And you'll notice this is kind of a recurring theme of mine throughout this webinar, in that you need to help your prospects make a plan to a decision, whether that's buying from you or not. And I think this is another statistic from Gong, is that close rates actually can decrease by over 70% when you fail to discuss next steps. And that shouldn't really come as too much of a surprise, because, for any AEs or even SDRs on a call, how much tougher is it to get a second meeting on the calendar if you don't actually secure that meeting live on a call with your prospect, right? If your prospect doesn't really know what to expect next and doesn't agree to what's next, then the deal probably isn't going to be going anywhere. When next steps are in place, you know exactly where you're headed, how you're getting there, and whether everyone actually agrees on the journey. And so with that, you can ensure that deals actually have direction, movement, and commitment. Finally, take the burden off the prospect again. This helps build trust. At the end of the day, people really hate uncertainty, and they also hate making decisions. I put this picture here of Steve Jobs wearing his iconic turtleneck and dad jeans outfit. And if you didn't know why Steve Jobs actually wore that outfit every single day for decades, it's not because he just loves those specific clothes. It's that he wanted to reduce his decision fatigue. It's tiring to make decisions. And so that was one decision he could remove out of the equation every day, so that he could have time to make more important decisions on bigger things in life. So a couple tactical tips around next steps is, again, budget time to align on next steps. So let your prospect know upfront at the start of every call that you'll be ending your meeting early to align on next steps. So say to your prospect at the top of the call, is it all right if we say 5 minutes at the end of this call to sort out what we'll be doing next for your evaluation? Do everything in your power to get a follow-up meeting on the calendar at the end of that call. Anything that's on the calendar will be top of mind visually for your prospect when the time comes. They may push that meeting later on, but at least it's there and it's hard to ignore. Another thing is sell the next step. So unless you're selling like a super transactional product that's like really fast moving and you can, close someone on the spot, then you need to just be selling the value of the next step to your prospect. So why is it important for your prospect to take another meeting for you? And what are they going to get out of it? Try to answer those questions to ensure that they buy into the next step. Finally, again, people don't like uncertainty. So present past just the next step, present the next step, and maybe the next step, so that they know what's coming later on and they know how long this evaluation is going to take and how much effort it's going to take. It can just help build a lot of trust with them. Lastly here, be really crystal clear with all your next steps. So with dates, action items, things that are agreed upon, summarize the mutual action plan in your emails to them, and outline all of the details here. So ideally you get their buy-in on what's coming next, and you're aligning on not when the close date or signature date is, but when they need to be seeing business impact from your solution. So really here, you're going to have to work with your champion to align on what the mutual action plan is, why it's helpful for them to have that, what agreed upon dates there are, and yeah, ultimately you don't want to force them into a mutual action plan. You want to be doing this with them. All right, so we're breezing through pretty quick here. Point number 6 is to show ROI. And so what some sellers are really good at is getting people emotionally charged behind your solution. And that's awesome. People are very emotionally driven in general with their decisions, but as we discussed earlier on, it takes a lot of decision makers, it takes a lot of stakeholders to actually secure a deal these days. And so no matter how bad someone wants to buy your product in their own heart, they need to rationalize the decision with their brain, right? And so so that's kind of the importance of building out an actual business case and showing the return on their investment from your product. And so you need to be validating all these positive emotions they're having later on down the funnel, especially with logic. So the key here is don't talk about ROI metrics too early on, before they're emotionally charged. Instead, this is usually a mid or late funnel activity that you can do with your prospect, especially for bigger deals that require more stakeholders. Later on in the funnel, you need to rationalize why their emotions make sense with numbers. So tactical tip here is to actually dedicate a working session with your champion. So oftentimes you won't get the final economic buyer or signer in the room with you, sometimes at all during a deal. Oftentimes I've seen that the CFO can be the final signer and doesn't actually need to be involved in deals, but needs to look at a business case and decide whether or not it makes sense over all the other things that people are asking for to compete for the limited budget that that company has. And so dedicate a meeting to working with your champion to build out the business case. And the key here is they have to weigh in for it to be effective. So you actually have to walk them through the numbers. You have to walk them through their use case. And ultimately, you want to be really realistic with the numbers that you're giving them. If you give them like just your one best customers numbers, it's not going to be realistic, and they might honestly get turned off and not want to show this business case to anyone. Don't be afraid to give a range, maybe of like low, medium, and high expectation scenarios of what the results would be of working with you. All right, so point number 7 here is what I call the silver bullet, and salespeople are oftentimes looking for the silver bullet, the end all be all to increasing the number of sales that you can make. And there's really not any silver bullets in sales, but there's one. If I had to point to one thing, this would be my silver bullet in sales. And the answer is prospecting. As an AE, I never ever quit prospecting, regardless of how much inbound I was getting. Our marketing team at UserGems is insanely good at what they do, and we had more inbound than I could possibly care for. But nothing cures your funnel like a full funnel, like a full top of funnel. So what a full funnel would mean for you is that you're never ever desperate to close a deal. At the end of the day, half your commission check comes from the deals or half your paycheck in general comes from your commissions and the deals you close. And so I know that feeling of being desperate to hit quota, but as long as you have a really healthy top of funnel, you should never be desperate, and your prospects will never smell commission breath. Commission breath is what's going to cause your prospects to kind of recoil into this zone of resistance and this zone of discomfort of not wanting to buy from you. So try to fill up the top of the funnel, and the benefits will trickle out through the rest of your cycles. Yeah, so Joel, great question here. From an SDR perspective, it can be company dependent. I could talk about filling top of funnel for a whole nother hour or multiple hours, but we'll touch on some high level stuff here. And if you want to shoot me a note afterward, we can trade notes as well, Joel. But here are some tactical tips I found to fill my funnel. And so the key for me as a pretty busy AE previously was to work smarter and not harder with filling my funnel. So pick the warmest possible prospects first, who are most likely to hop on meetings with me and most likely to close deals faster with me. And so I've got a couple bullet points here of where I think in priority are the hottest possible prospects that you can find. The first is past customers who have moved companies. These are people who have already worked with your company in the past, experienced the value you can provide. You don't need to educate them from square one. And so they're pretty open to chatting with you again after they do move companies. Second, this one often gets overlooked, is prospects who move companies. So look through your open opportunity, closed lost prospects who have met with you at any point historically. These folks also know of your company. They've explored your solution in the past. And oftentimes the reason they didn't buy in the first place is not because they didn't like your solution. It could be because there was no budget, or there was another blocker, or there was some missing feature that now your company actually has. The idea here is, though, that they saw value in your solution once, and when they move companies, there's a whole new budget, whole new buying committee. Your product's probably been updated, and so you get another at-bat with them. Third is warm referrals. So referrals are such a hot source of pipeline, but you have to know who and when to ask for them. I've asked for past customers to give me referrals after they onboard successfully. I've even asked prospects who don't end up buying from me for referrals, and I've found this to just be like a really great channel as long as you're willing to ask. Fourth is people who worked at a customer account previously. So this one is similar to the first point, but a little bit different in that they may never actually have been a customer themselves, but you notice on their LinkedIn that at some point they worked at a customer account of yours. It could have been years ago. What's nice here is you can still be creating that sense of safety with the herd, in that their past employer is in love with your product, and you can ask if they have any previous connections there to go speak with kind of externally about the results they've seen. Final 2 points here are new hires and new promotions. So new hires, there's an interesting stat that 70% of a new hire's budget is spent in the first 100 days in their new role. So these folks have budget and they're usually looking to shake things up and make a splash in their org. So so target people who have kind of recently joined their seat. Finally, the cold leads, just other ICP fit prospects. Find who your ideal customer looks like in terms of title, seniority, and make sure you're reaching out to all those folks. All right, so for those of you who have stuck it out here for the past 40 minutes with me, I know you signed up for only 7 tips, but I do have an 8th here that was just too good to leave out. And so the reason for this tip is just kind of going off the previous slide and theme here is work smarter, not harder. This will allow you to just have more time in your day to do more productive revenue generating activities. One stat that kills me is that 17% of any rep's time is spent on doing administrative work, like entering sales info into your CRM or researching prospects. And this is by far my least favorite part about being a seller is entering in CRM data, because at the end of the day, that's almost 7 hours a week that you could have otherwise used going to the gym, watching Netflix, or of course, accelerating your deals, spending time with more prospects or spending time on strategic level initiatives that can help you close more deals later on. So what would any webinar really be these days without a bit of a shameless self-plug? We're introducing a new free product for the time being called UserGems Meeting Assistant. And this is single-handedly one of the most impactful tools in my stack that I use every single day. The best part is that it requires 0 learning or onboarding for you. So it's not another tool to distract you from your time. Instead, here's what it does for you. Essentially, for those of you with Salesforce and Google Calendar for the time being, what you'll be able to do is arrive to your calls fully prepared. You know who you're meeting with in terms of titles and being able to automatically link to their LinkedIns. Whether or not you've met with them previously, it's or if they've met with anyone in your company previously, so that you can go prep with those internal meetings beforehand. It makes for so much easier with time with multi-threading to just be able to send LinkedIn requests out to everyone you're going to meet with beforehand, to make sure you're following up with all the right people who did join your meeting. Third, my favorite thing is that there's no more copy and paste to Salesforce. Before, what would happen is I'd have like 10 people join a meeting, and I would have to, after the meeting, add the 9 other people who didn't request a demo with me into Salesforce. I'd have to add all their, all their information, their title, email, etc. Instead, all of this is automatically appended to your account and opportunity levels within Salesforce. And fourth, what's nice is if your company hasn't bought UserGems already, you'll notice that a lot of the warmest leads that you can reach out to are people who recently moved roles. And so you can get job change alerts on everyone you've ever met with so that you can sell to them again with all their new contact info right after they change roles. So this product is going to be free for all signups before October 1st. So make sure you go ahead and sign up here. There's a nifty little QR code that I'll leave on screen for a second. And yeah, feel free to invite your friends, invite your colleagues. There's unlimited signups that will be available up till the start of next month. All right. Well, we made it through with 15 minutes to spare here. So not sure if the audience has any questions or any tips or notes that they want to chime in with, but thanks so much everyone for joining on the day after a long weekend. I know it's it's probably a busy day for everyone. So thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Derek. Everyone, go ahead and grab that UserGems meeting assistant. Especially, you got to love that it's free before October 1st. I know that I'll definitely be snagging that for myself. Really appreciate all the content that you shared with us today, Derek. Those of you who want more information on UserGems, feel free also to reach out to us at RevGenius. If you would like the replay, you can email me, Bree@revgenius.com. And until next time, we really appreciate you stopping by. Derek, thank you so much. Really appreciate everything that you and our partners at UserGem are doing in our relationship.
All right. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everyone.